In this very dark time, I have been seeing some things that give me hope. Namely, that the grassroots is more organized and devoted and dedicated than maybe I've ever seen. You know, I don't remember nearly as much the anti-Iraq war protests at the time. I was a little too young. But this seems to me to be even more pressure than what they were experiencing at the time, back during the Iraq war. So here we have the pro-Palestine crowd is not stopping. They see the death and destruction in Gaza. They see the 12,000 innocent civilians who've been killed, the nearly 6,000 children, that half of Gaza is destroyed, ethnic cleansing of moving them from north to south Gaza, trying to set up a tent city in the Sinai Desert. They see all this, and they say, unacceptable. And many of the leading voices are Jewish, like Jewish Voice for Peace. They say, not in my, and the group, not in my name. They're like, hey, don't do any of this in my name. When we said never again, we don't just mean it for us, we mean it for everybody. So here you have a pro-Palestine crowd protesting outside of Biden's Delaware home. Watch this. They're not messing around, man. Now, this is on top of many protesters blocking ships that had weapons for Israel. They blocked the ships from leaving. Now, I never saw any follow-ups on that. I don't know how long they were able to block it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could have been for a couple hours, could have been for a full day. And then I also saw in Australia, same thing. You had protesters blocking a ship with weapons bound for Israel. And this is like, look, it's direct action I can get behind, right? Because I always go back to that Chomsky quote when he was asked about what kind of political violence is acceptable. And basically he said, as a general rule, I'm against political violence, but in instance where it is just flat out the moral thing to do and the ethical thing to do, he gives the example of knowing that a weapons shipment is bound to go to Vietnam where innocent, landless peasant villagers are going to be napalmed and Agent Oranged from the sky and killed and murdered. And he says, if you go into the weapons depot or the ship at night and you destroy all the weaponry, yes, you're doing property damage, but like we know those weapons were going to be used for genocide. So it's the moral thing to do that. He gives that as an example of like quote unquote political violence he can get behind because there's really like no downsides. You know, it's just the property damage. But if we know what the weapons are going towards and it's evil, then it makes sense to stop it. It's like the classic example of, is it wrong to steal, to do robbery or theft? Absolutely. But if your kid is dying and you need the medicine and you can't afford it and you go to the pharmacy and steal it so you can save your kid's life, is anybody going to condemn that person? Is that immoral? Is that unethical? No. It's an example of like, yeah, you're breaking the law, but you're actually correct to do it. And so what I've seen going on with these protests and this activism is exactly that. It's like people clearly on the right side of a moral line, but taking bold action and being organized. So shout out to these people. Look at this. So here we have a Palestinian woman confronts Elizabeth Warren when she's out to dinner with her husband. And she says, hey, 68 family members of mine in Gaza are dead. And let's see what happens. This is my first time watching this, by the way.
I think some water to get started. Of course, we have tap water. We also have
So she said, I'm eating dinner.
Family killed over the last 5 weeks. I just don't know how many more have to die before you're going to call for a ceasefire. I don't know. What do you I don't know. Like, how much more do I have to say for you to call for a ceasefire? People in your office every day asking you to call for a ceasefire, and you are refusing to call for a ceasefire.
I don't think this is the proper place for it.
Somebody chimed in and said, I don't think this is the proper place for this. She was kind, she was nice, she was understanding, but she walked up and said, hey, 68 members of my family are dead. How many more civilians are going to have to die before you call for a ceasefire in Gaza? And she tried to be dismissive, said, hey, I'm eating. But sorry, like your comfort in that moment is less important than somebody getting across the political message that you are actually facilitating, at the very least, the brazen and wanton death of over 10,000 civilians. You know, you could use the word genocide. You could use the word ethnic cleansing. If people look at that and they say those words are too politically charged and they have such an extreme connotation that people shut down when you say it, okay, then let's move the language to you're facilitating the killing of massive numbers of civilians by not calling for a ceasefire. That's a stone cold fact. And look, it made her a little uncomfortable in the moment. And good. Good. So I hope that that makes her think, and that makes her come out in favor of a ceasefire. I hope that it has that impact. And it might, you know, enough people do something like this. Like, Jesus, I can't even go out and have a meal without people saying all these horrible things to me. So I guess I gotta correct course, right? So shout out to this woman. What she did was very brave as well. Now we have this. This is my first time seeing this as well. Biden gave a speech in Illinois. I believe this was supposed to be on like the UAW stuff. And it was immediately interrupted by a pro-Palestine protester. Let's listen.
My dad ran he didn't own it. He ran an automobile agency for a long time. Okay. No, let it go. Let it, no, don't. Let it, it's okay. Anyway. Look.
It's quite a weird flex for everybody else to start chanting, "We love Joe."
I guess what I'm trying to say to you is, I grew up in neighborhoods where I know what it likes when the plant closes down.
All right, so that person was screaming for a ceasefire. Look, I got to say it, man. All these people should have to experience protests like this until they call for a ceasefire. At the very least, I mean, we know it needs to go further, not just a ceasefire, but you have to have some sort of diplomatic negotiated settlement, whether it be a one-state solution or a two-state solution, whether it's just ending the apartheid and the occupation, or it's having a Palestinian state and an Israeli state and equal representation at the UN and UN peacekeepers in the region, full autonomy for both, sovereignty for both. Like, whatever the solution is, we know it starts with a ceasefire right now with all these innocent people dying. We can't allow it. We can't accept it. And we're arming Israel. We're funding Israel as they do it. Not acceptable. So not only do you need a ceasefire, you also, look, I would go as far as to say if we were going to sanction Russia for invading Ukraine, which I get, we should have, at this point, we got to sanction Israel. At this point, we got to sanction Israel. They've killed way more civilians than even Russia had in this time span that we're talking about. More people died. What was this? It was some crazy fact. Like more children died in this than in every world conflict for the year before. What are we talking about here? So look, shout out to this person who does this protest. It's brave. And everybody should do it until they call for a ceasefire, until he puts pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to immediately stop the bombing. At the very least, all these people are giving me hope. Now, I just want to show you what impact this is having on the ground. So here we have an imam in Michigan who's going after Biden and is like, hey, basically, never again. I'm not going to vote for you. None of my followers are going to vote for you. You don't deserve it. You don't earn it. I can't believe you're as bloodthirsty as you are. This is the real world impact. Biden's numbers have plummeted with young people, and he's been hemorrhaging Arab American and Muslim American support. And he needs those voters. He needs them. Listen to this.
Illegal Zionist regime that is non-state has murdered one of my relatives overseas. And if I were to vote, the ink that I would use to sign on that ballot would be through the blood of the innocent civilians of Palestine. I want you to know, Biden, that when you're helplessly counting the final count of all the states to see whether or not you will gain another term, I want you to remember my face. There's no consolation, even if you lose the election, but there's at least some relief that we will be the reason that you will not be in power, because you are a bloodthirsty murderer and you will not remain in power. It doesn't end here in Michigan. Legal.
Now, look, it's a fair response to say, hey, if you look at the totality of the Biden policies versus the Trump policies, Trump is just objectively worse if you have left-wing goals. That's a fair thing to say. But at the same time, what are you going to say to a guy who just had a family member get murked? What are you going to say? Are you going to finger wag and shame him and say you're obligated to vote like I want you to vote? Is that what you're going to do? It's just... Biden can fix this. If Biden calls for a ceasefire, if Biden pressures Bibi Netanyahu, if Biden sanctions Israel or at least takes away their subsidies or does something through the UN to express massive disapproval and to find some sort of a solution for Palestinians, Biden, it's on him. It's on him. And if people are so disgusted with what's going on, that he's facilitating this slaughter, that now it's like, they're like, I'm not even going to say anything about Trump. I'm just going to say you're bloodthirsty and you're facilitating a genocide. So of course I'm not going to vote for you. This is where people are at. This is where people are at. And it's on him to change it. It's on him to take action to change it. I'm just explaining what is effectively, I view it as a law of nature. If you're going to facilitate this sort of slaughter, bloodshed, this wanton disregard for innocent Palestinian civilians, if you're going to do that, well, you're going to reap what you sow. You know, you're going to sleep in the bed that you made. That's what's going to happen. I'm just saying. I'm just telling you. So he can do something to fix it, but he has to do it. This is where people are at, man. And then finally we get this. Congressional staffers say an onslaught of calls and emails asking for members to support a ceasefire has caught Dems completely off guard. Jesus Christ, talk about living in an ivory tower. I've never seen such a disconnect between where voters and constituents are and where Congress is. You don't say. So the staffers didn't know that people are watching this bloodshed? People are watching this slaughter, this ethnic cleansing, and they're like, yeah, I'm against that because my money and our weapons are being used. I'm not in favor of that. They should stop. They're shocked. The people are taking this. They are astonishingly out of touch. And I think Crystal was right when Crystal said they think, the Democratic leads think, oh, this will blow over. Yeah, people are mad at us. It'll blow over. Will it? It feels kind of different, man, doesn't it? It feels kind of different. This is a bridge too far for almost anybody with a conscience, right? So they better get their act together. They better call for a ceasefire. They better reel in Bibi Netanyahu. They better not allow this to get more out of hand. They want a war with, Israel wants a war with Hezbollah and Lebanon now. They're open about that fact. We're just going to let him start a colossal regional war where the whole Middle East is, you want Iran involved? You want Syria involved? You want Hezbollah and Lebanon involved? You want the U.S. to have to bring our own troops there to protect Netanyahu because he decided he wanted to go on a 4-week slaughter orgy? Shout out to all these people who are making calls, pressuring politicians. Keep it up. Do not stop. Do not stop. Keep going. It's the only way we somehow can make this less horrible, is if everybody still keeps doing what you're doing. Don't stop. Ramp it up. Make it so they genuinely feel, I literally have no choice but to call for a ceasefire, because that's the only time they're going to do it, is if they feel like, hey, the donor money I'm going to lose is worth it because I'm just losing way too many voters if I don't call for a ceasefire. You got to make it feel like it's not even a choice for them. You have to put them in that position, and it requires dedication, organization, and work. People are doing it. Credit and power to them. Keep going. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.